Welcome back to the World of Marketing podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, a true legend in the direct response marketing industry, Brian Kurtz. Brian, also my good friend, has been at the forefront of direct response marketing for over 4 decades. Is it longer than that now?
No, it's 40. It's 44 years, but yeah,
44.
over 4 decades. Yeah,
There you go.
I
Quarterbacking
started when I
countless.
was 9. If people are doing the math, of how old I am.
He's been quarterbacking countless successful product launches and business transformations. As the former executive vice president of Boardroom Inc., Brian was instrumental in growing it into one of the most successful direct marketing companies, where he oversaw the mailing of over 1.3 billion pieces of direct mail. Since founding Titans Marketing, Brian has continued sharing his knowledge through his mastermind groups, books, and consulting work. I'm delighted to have recently joined his Titans Mastermind group, where Brian continues fostering a community of exceptional marketers committed to ethical, customer-centric business practices. Brian's approach blends time-tested direct response principles with innovative strategies, making him one of the most respected voices in our industry. Today, we'll dive into Brian's insights on what truly drives results in marketing and the wisdom he's gained from 4 decades of extraordinary success. Brian, welcome to the show, buddy.
I am so happy to be here, Tom. You know, you and I, it's like we're like old friends almost, but you're kind of a newer friend because I met you not that far after I left Boardroom, where I, cut my teeth and spent 34 years as an owner there and just building my entrepreneurial skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went out on my own and created Titans Marketing, I had a live mastermind, a $25,000 mastermind. I had any up to 30 companies. And when you joined that, I just gravitated to you and how you thought about business. And because just this podcast, which I followed ever since you launched it, is you have an insatiable curiosity to be a sponge and learn and you got your own chops in the stuff that you do.
Oh, well, thank you, Ben.
But I think that I really believe that we're all lifelong learners, and when you stop learning, you might as well be dead. And I will be learning till I die. And people say, oh, Brian, you teach so much and you're instructing people all the time, and I always say, I learn by teaching. I in my mastermind groups in particular, where I bring in the best of the best in marketing, copywriting, media buying, entrepreneurship, and I always say every person knows everything about this much. And if people aren't looking at me on a screen, it's my thumb and my index finger 3 inches apart. And everybody knows everything about this much. And when everybody can share that within, a group, it's magic, and that's why I love masterminding. I love being with, smart people, a room where everybody's getting smarter. I always say, and I didn't make up this quote, but it's a quote I'm known for, not because I invented it, but because I use it a lot, is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I know you believe that wholeheartedly, and I do too. And that's why I think, we meshed early on. And when you came back into the fold in my virtual mastermind, which is Titans Accelerator, which is not $25,000, it's only $2,000 a year, because I wanted to reach more people. And that has 250 members, of which now you and one of your associates are members. I was like so happy because even though we had a gap in where we were always connected somehow, and now we're reconnected.
Oh, yeah.
And then you say, will you come on my podcast? And it's like, before you got the words out, the answer is yes, of course. So that's why I'm here, and I just want to serve your community any way I can. And anything you want to ask me about marketing, my books.
Everybody. He's got this great book, Over Deliver.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. Yes.
It's really good. And I'm telling you right now, everybody, this guy right here, if you have not heard of Brian Kurtz, you need to look him up. Check out his website, briankurtz.net. That's KURTZ.net. He's one of the nicest gentlemen. And what I was telling him before we got started here is he has this natural ability to attract others, and he attracts some of the best marketing minds and business minds out there. And that's why, I kind of, when I first did it, I didn't really know. I was blown away when I was in the mastermind originally, but I didn't really appreciate it as much until I didn't have it, you know?
Me too.
Yeah. And so when I was getting your emails, and I'm like, every email is like a clinic on how to write an email. And I think it was that last one that I responded to. I was like, okay, you got me. I'm back. And I sent that on to my marketing people. And I was like, this is how you write an email, man. And I always do that. I send your emails on to them.
Right. I do a Sunday email every Sunday morning, goes out at 6 a.m. Eastern time, every Sunday. And I've done it for, 7, 8 years.
See, it's amazing. You still do so much.
It doesn't feel like a lot, only because I've compartmentalized my schedule. I mean, hopefully people on who are listening have heard of Dan Kennedy, who's a legendary marketer. And Dan, just is so protective of his time. He has I always say he has a moat around his castle all the time. And my moat doesn't have gators in it, and you can swim it, You can get to me pretty easily.
You respond to email like immediately.
I know. But the thing is that I still, I do try to guard my time at least. I'm not even close to what Dan does. I mean, Dan won't get on the phone with you without charging you.
You got to fax him.
Yeah, you got to fax him too. You can't even email him. So it's like, I just, this idea that, it's not magic to attract amazing people. And I'll give your listeners the secret, but they probably know it already. But if they don't know it, I definitely think it's worth sharing, which is that it's not networking. Like, I hate the word networking. In fact, I wrote that in my book, the beginning of chapter 10, titled "Playing the Long Game." And my first words were, I hate the word networking. And what happened was when I was in my 20s, I was profiled in a trade magazine, and it was a 30 under 30. So these are like the 30 people to watch who are under 30 years old, right? And so, it was flattering to be in the article for sure. But they labeled me, the headline under my section when they talked about me was strategic schmoozer. That's how they defined me. And I said, you know what? That sucks, because that's not who I am.
Right.
But the thing was, after and this was like, maybe I was 28, so I was in the business for like 5 years. I made a name for myself in the list management business, in direct mail. I mean, back in the 1980s, this is like 1988 or something. And, things are maybe even earlier, maybe 87. And things are not, there aren't that many advertising opportunities. It was, direct mail, space advertising, radio, TV, some inserts, but everything was finite. So it was like, and knowing everybody was really important to me. But I did it in a way early on that I wanted to go deep and not wide. So the comparison would be today. The person with 5,000 Facebook friends is seen as like a great networker or a great connector or a great, brings people together. They don't. That's just accumulating people. The thing that is key, and again, I know your listeners know this, but this is, I mean, after 44 years, all I can say is I know that this has worked for me, and I probably have another 40 years to figure out whether it's still going to work, but I think it works so far. And so the thing was that I always wanted to, instead of just thinking about networking and meeting people, I had to contribute to them first. Contribute and then connect. Contribute and then connect. And by doing it that way, that's how you attract the best people. And when you contribute, I add in another concept. I haven't invented anything. I just took a lot of different concepts, brought them into my life, and that's how I ran my life. And the other one is the 100-0 concept. Like, you give 100% of yourself in every relationship. You don't expect anything in return. And guess what happens? Stuff comes back to you, even if not from the person that you were giving to.
Sure.
But I believe in
That's how the
serendipity.
universe works.
Yeah, that's how the universe works. And I don't do it to get stuff back. I just do it
It's just part
because
of
I
who
want
you
to
are.
create. Well, I want to create relationships, like deep relationships with people. I hate superficial relationships, and I think that one of the things that happens when you're connecting with a lot of people, that people make the mistake of saying, "Well, I know this guy, therefore I have a relationship with them." But a relationship takes time. It's not
Yeah, yeah.
immediate. And I think that's some of the things that, people need to realize. And I wrote this blog post once, and it was never make an ask from nowhere. And what it meant was that when you want to ask a favor of somebody, or you want to ask for something, like I asked one of these great marketers to come speak at my mastermind, for example. I I don't do that very easily. But when I do it, I know that I have the relationship with that person to ask, and the odds of them saying yes are close to 100%. How do you get there? Time, putting time into the relationship, putting time into the care, contributing as much as you can all the time. And I mean, we can talk about marketing tactics and all that, but if you don't have the basic, um, if you don't have the basic premise, if you're a marketer or a salesperson, and if I always say everything in marketing and in life is not a revenue event, but everything is a relationship event.
Yeah, you're right.
And once you have the relationship, the revenue is going to come. I mean, it's not like the book that says, do what you love and the money will follow. You got to put something into it. You got to really, it's not just doing what you love, but it's loving people and loving the relationships. And once the relationship is developed, then you can ask each other for stuff, and it's natural. It's not an ask from nowhere. And
Right.
that's kind of because you said before you, as you said before you turned the recording on, you said, one of the things you said, and I was very flattered when you said the things that you see in me is that I'm connected and I bring people together. But it didn't happen by magic. It took a lot of years and a lot of, contributing and connecting.
Well, you're very transparent. You're very transparent. Like, that's the other thing that I got from you right away is that there's no bullshit going on. You don't feel that weird feeling that you get when you're getting bullshitted, by bullshitters. All right. Well, you kind of already answered this question, I think, but this is my first question on the direct response evolution. You've witnessed tremendous changes in direct response marketing over 4 decades. Which foundational principles have remained constant despite technological shifts? And what new principles have emerged that marketers today must embrace?
Wow, that's a big question, and I have a lot of answers to it. Um, I will say that the more things change, the more they stay the same, which I guess
Hmm.
you would have figured I would say that, only because the fundamentals of human beings, like human behavior, that hasn't changed at all. I mean, people still are motivated by greed. They're motivated by their
There
own
you go.
their
Yep.
own self, their
Yep.
self interests and all that. So as far as the selling marketplace, that hasn't changed, but the techniques have just gotten so advanced. And I was on a podcast yesterday or the day before, and the guy asked me something similar. He asked me, what would you think about back then, like in the 1980s, that if you saw like a technology that's hot today, that would have been something that you could have adapted earlier, what would it be? And of course, he expected me to say AI and Chat GPT, which I didn't,
Right.
because that's kind of obvious. And of course, I'd like to have that. But the interesting thing I started thinking about, it was actually like marketing models more than anything else. It's like the model, like the ascension model, which I didn't have at my fingertips back in the 1980s, which is you start with a low price product and you go to a higher price product. That wasn't like as prevalent as it
Nope.
was once the internet took hold, when you could market much more inexpensively online versus offline. And so that's a fundamental though, that Chapter 3 of my book, Over Deliver. It's the title is How Paying Postage Made Me a Better Marketer. And it's not to say that everybody should do direct mail today. I don't say that at all. But because I grew up in the world of direct mail where we were paying postage and printing for every communication with our audience, it taught me a marketing discipline that it's out there today. People still have marketing discipline in terms of when they send emails, when they do launches, when they do webinars. But I think that because media is so much cheaper today than it was,
Hmm.
that it's not an excuse to be sloppy. I get it.
That is a great point, and that comes up all the time, right?
Yeah.
You have conversations with people, and you're like, you make a recommendation. Oh, I did that. I've done that, and like, well, you did it once, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you did some
Testing.
crap
Oh,
junk,
yeah, exactly.
right? And
Yes.
and they think, oh, that direct mail doesn't work because of that, and you're right. Having to having gone through this myself, not with 1.3 billion mailings, but my 5,000 newsletter mailings that would go out in years past, and half of them would come back, and it would just drive me insane.
Yes, 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 yes.
And it caused me to stop doing the print newsletter until I could get that list cleaned up and I could come up with a better message, because I wanted that. And our new newsletter is starting in May. So
Nice. I'll
I'm
make sure I'm on
excited
that
about
list.
putting that
Yes.
out. Yeah, I'll make sure I'm on the list. I'd like to get your feedback on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there another fundamental that I mean the fundamentals are the same. So a few of the fundamentals that I love to talk about, there are three in my book that are focused on in different chapters. One is the 40-40-20 rule. And the 40-40-20 rule, and this was something I learned early in my career in one of the textbooks on direct marketing. And it says that the success of any marketing campaign depends 40% on the list, which in this case could be the market or the media that you're buying or the audience, 40% on the offer that you make, and 20% on the creative or the messaging. Now, I picked that apart time and again early in my career. And then as I was doing all the mailings that I did, I started really adapting a different perspective on the 40-40-20 rule. And what I decided to do in my book, Over Deliver, is I changed it to the 41-39-20 rule. And the reason why I did that, because the 41 is the list, and the list or the audience is the most important. And that doesn't mean, though, that the 20%, which is the creative, is half as important, which was 20. Remember, it was 20, it was
Yep.
40-40-20. And so then I wrote a blog post that said the creative and the copywriting and the messaging is the least important until it's not. And what I meant by that is that once you have the list dialed in, the offer dialed in, then the creative is the most important. But if you start with the creative, if you start, and a lot of people do, because they're
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
right, they start with the creative, they start with the copy, they start with the design, and they're
And they
not
don't even know who they're sending it to.
exactly. So
Right.
when you send something to someone that is not interested in what you have to send, you'll get zero orders. Now, the interesting thing is that the reverse is not true. The reverse says if the list is really good and the offer is mediocre and the copy is mediocre, you'll make some sales.
Yeah, yeah,
You'll make
that's
some
true.
sales.
That is
And
true.
it happened
As
because,
long as they're aligned, right? As long
right,
as there is that offer and that copy is aligned to the list and can
right.
speak to that list,
But
right?
then by taking, then once you have the audience, the list, and the offer dialed in, then you invest deeply in the creative. At Boardroom where I worked for 34 years, we invested in the top copy. You met a lot of the top copywriters that
Yeah,
were in
yeah.
Mastermind. So I invested in the best of the best because I knew that that's where that's gonna be direct marketing nirvana because that's where you get the best copy, with the best offer to the best list. And I knew I specialized in the list. That was my specialty. List segmentation, making sure I had the audience dialed in for whatever offer was going out. Then the magicians, the copywriters, I would go to them and to buy, I used to say the dangers of one-stop shopping back in the 80s and 90s, and I think it's true today. You're not going to find the best copywriters working in an agency. The
Right.
best copywriters are usually on their own, making royalties because they're better than everybody else. And that's where I made a huge investment. So then people would say to me, well, if it's only 20%, that's what they always say, the 40-40, and you can't take the 40-40-20 rule, the 41-39-20 rule literally, but you need to look at it. And that's a concept that I think applies today still in every medium.
And it forever will. It forever will.
And then another concept that has stood the test of time, and it's been updated and done much better today than ever before, is the concept of lifetime value. That, the customer, anybody who's looking to do marketing of any kind, and they're going out with their first offer and they don't have a second offer or a third offer, at least in mind, even if they don't have it developed yet, they're not going to have a business. They're going to have an offer. They're going to have, like, John Carlton, one of the great copywriters of all time, once said to me, a promotion is not a business. So I was at a mastermind with him once, and a guy at the mastermind had like the top offer on ClickBank. ClickBank was a big affiliate network at the time. I don't know if it's still around.
I remember.
I think it is. And so this guy had an amazing offer on ClickBank. Like it was crushing it. I hate that term, but he was crushing it. Okay. So, and John Carlton asked the guy, he said, okay, so you're kicking ass with this offer. What's your next offer? Like, what are you going to do when that one fizzles out? And the guy was like, well, it was almost like he was thinking, it's never going to fizzle out. Like,
Right.
It's going to last forever. And then you're a one-trick pony. Then you're a one-hit wonder. And so that concept of, what's the next offer, the next iteration, the next thing, that's about, and also, can you make your offer renewable? Whether it's a newsletter, a course, a mastermind where you can renew them. I mean, there are limited coaching, programs that are 6 months, but to not have something after the 6 months, and I see it all the time. People have a great idea. They want to teach something. They create a course, and it's a 6-month sprint and a course. And after the course, there's nothing to sell them.
Or they just do one direct mail. They do one offer, right?
Oh,
and that's it.
An offer. As I said, an offer is not a business.
Right. I mean, but they only do it once. They only communicate once to that list, and then they're like, "I wonder why that didn't work." I mean, you have to hit it.
I mean, you look at a guy like Ben Settle, who's like the king of email. He's doing 2 or 3 emails a day sometimes, because
it's incredible that that he can do that. And
yes. But he knows his audience. He knows what they'll tolerate. He knows what they're interested in. I mean, it's knowing your audience. It's what it is.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know Ben Settle, you got to check him out, because he's
bensettle.com.
world class of his own, man.
Yeah, and even if you're not going to ever buy anything from him, just watch what he does. And it's not to copy him, but it's always good to look at models. He's a model of somebody who has the discipline to do, emails every day, multiple emails, always with a message at the bottom that's selling something, but they're not all sales emails in a way. And now I do it differently because, I do my emails usually like it's storytelling in the first part, and in the PS, I try to sell something that's educational or related to what I talked about in the blog itself. And, I don't do affiliates. So if I'm going to sell something else from somebody else, it's got to be something I believe in, and I'm not looking for affiliate commissions. So this is just me now. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. I'm not looking for money here. So I basically say that, if I have somebody who has a product or service that wants to promote to my list, I promote it, and I say you have to give them a price that's less what the affiliate commission would be to me. Some people don't want to do that. They think it cheapens their product. But if they were going to pay me, I want to give that discount to the people on my list, which I call my online family, which I
Yeah.
always call my online family. So I always remember that lists are people too. You have to
Right.
keep, they're not just names, they're
Right.
people.
They're not just metrics.
Exactly, exactly. So, so lifetime value, so it's 40, 40, 20 lifetime value. And the third one that is, so prevalent today, and yet people don't even realize that they're using it, is RFM. RFM is basically how people behave in the marketplace. And it's been true forever. And RFM stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. And so in my book, when I talked about list building, I did it in terms of, I think I titled the chapter, list building and RFM, because RFM is it's not a rule of thumb, but it's a fundamental of how people behave in the marketplace. So the concept is someone who responds more recently is
Right.
worth more than someone who responds less recently. Someone who responds more frequently is more valuable than someone who less frequently. And someone who spends more with you generally is someone who's more valuable than someone who spends less with you. But
Hmm.
it's putting those three things together. That's the key.
Yeah.
And every model we ever mail, this is in direct mail. We used to do these huge regression models. I'm not going to go into the details, and I'm not a statistician. I was an English major, so I don't know shit about numbers, except I knew what a regression model was. I knew what a gains chart was. So when I saw the results of it, I knew what to do with it and had a mail to my list in terms of how deep I could go based on the predictive model. But it was all based on recency, frequency, monetary value. So someone who was a recent buyer of one of my products and had bought multiple products in the past, and now I had a new product, those names would always be at the top of the gains chart, and they'd be the
Hmm.
names I'd always mail. Whereas if they were just recent, they might be. If they were just frequent, they might be. If they spent a lot of money, they might be. But it had to be all three things together. And people
You've
think
given
it's
me
complicated.
see, I just learned something right now, this RFM thing. Because I had always like 80/20 my list, right? 80/20. Take the top 20% of your most
It's
profitable
the same.
clients.
It's a similar principle,
It
but the
is,
rules
but
based
but
on
you're adding these other two metrics in there about the recency and the what was the F
frequency. How
frequency.
many times? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, right. And I'm going to implement that now. I had not done that before. So look, guys, I mean, that's just a little example of how we learn from each other so
Yeah,
much. I
yeah.
mean,
And
wow.
and it's interesting. One of the most satisfying things, um, and I had to do with RFM, and one of them had to do with RFM, were the people that um who read my book and came back to me and said things like, Brian, I never understood RFM until the way you explained it. Now that to me is as satisfying as inventing RFM, because I didn't invent RFM. It was invented. I haven't, as I said, I haven't invented anything in my career, but I've basically taken what's out there, connected the dots, and then tried to bring it home. Like the 40/40/20 rule, I didn't invent it, but I put different spins on it so people can understand it. And being the messenger for a concept, for something that's like an eternal truth, is just as good as inventing the eternal truth. You can't invent the eternal truth because it's eternal and was invented before you. But what you can do is it's sort of like, carrying on the tradition, taking the baton, innovating on how you explain it, how you apply it. And to me, that's as satisfying as inventing it, because I'm not going to be an inventor. I'm not, I mean, I don't even think of myself as an innovator, although I've innovated on concepts and
You're
then
so humble.
applied them. Well, no, I think that I just don't want to. I don't want to take credit for shit. I never want. I always want to. I
But
always
I
want
would
to
take
honor the
credit if
people.
I were. Here's what you can take credit for. You can take credit for taking existing concepts and repackaging them in a way that is more easily digestible by the people that look to you for mentorship, right? They
That's absolutely
understand
true.
the way that you communicate. And
Yeah,
so when you break down a concept like you are right now and explain it, people are like, wow, I get that. And before they could have heard it 50 times, but never understood it.
right, right. And
And
being a
that's what you
messenger
bring.
is what I want to be. I want to be a. And the thing is, I always talk about this too in terms of how you contribute to connect. It's so important that whenever I come up with something, I always want to give the credit because I think it's so much better. First of all, it kind of substantiates your own credibility when you can like lean on the credibility of great people who came before you. And so I understand that I stand on the shoulders of giants. And so by giving them the credit, it's not just being humble, it's not just deferring. Because people used to tell me, "Oh, Brian, you don't take credit for anything. All you do is like, talk about your mentors and talk about, how they taught you this stuff." And I said, "Thank you. I like that." Because that to me, and I had an epiphany on this in 2019 when the day before my book came out, actually, I had a near fatal stroke. I mean, I came this close to dying. Um, and when I woke up in the hospital, and I was paralyzed on my right side when I went down. When I
Wow.
got up, I didn't. As you can see, I can still move my arms, and
I know. Like I can't see any difference.
well,
I
I have
mean,
no sight in my left eye, but you can't see that either. But
oh,
I,
okay.
I, I know that. But the thing is that when I got up in the hospital room, I I thought about, I always you think about legacy, but I'm more into living legacy than, legacy kind of implies that you're dead. So I always like to think about what are you going to do while you're still alive. So I'm
Right.
still alive. I'm in the hospital bed, and I said, okay, if I had died, what would my footprint have been? Like, what was my footprint? And the book had just come out like that day. So it was like,
Wow.
okay, the book would be out there and be good. But that wasn't enough for me. What I realized is that I created a site for my book, overdeliverbook.com. That's the place to buy the book too, because you get all these bonuses and all that. But basically, what that site was basically what my career was all about. First of all, there's a lot of nice words from a lot of great marketers saying how great I am. That's not the reason why the site is good, but that's the testimonials from me in the book, the endorsements. But it was
Yeah.
more
Wow.
about what if you look at the bonuses. The bonuses are like videos of like some of the greatest direct marketers of all time, like Joe Sugarman and
Yeah.
and Ken McCarthy, just amazing stuff. And then I have a Dan Kennedy swipe file, and I
Yeah.
have a Gary Bencivenga, the greatest living copywriter. I put together his online Bencivenga bullets into a PDF. I have two books from the two direct mail giants that I learned direct mail from, Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman, full PDFs of their books, and they're not available anywhere. And you can get them just for buying my book. This is not an advertisement for overdeliverbook.com. Don't go to Amazon if you want to buy my book. Go to overdeliverbook.com
Yeah. Yeah.
and get the 11 bonuses that are there. But the bonuses were what my career is all about. Those are the shoulders of the giants. I mean, Jay Abraham, who wrote the foreword for my book, and Jay is, he'll be at
He's
my
a
event in
legend.
October. He's, the top of the top. Him and
What did you say?
yeah, Jay will be at my event my live event in
Oh,
October.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So Jay, I have two things from Jay in that on that site. One, and Jay is one of my ultimate mentors. So having him, so he did a course, like a course that he spent $200,000 to develop, and it was doing nothing, and he just gave it to me, and it's for free on overdeliverbook.com. For a $20 book, you get that as one of 11 things, and then also there are 19 keynote speeches that Jay Abraham gave, and they're on that site too. So basically, I'm sitting in my hospital room, and I said, "Man, now that's something to be remembered for. Like if people want to remember me, and I have a book called Over Deliver. I over delivered on the bonuses for sure, but it was bigger than that. It was like I honored all of my mentors, dead and alive, and that's what my life's about. Because anybody who calls me a mentor, that fills me up more than anything. When people tell me that they learned something from my book, that I explained it better, that fills me up. But also when they tell me they use the word mentor, because I don't use it loosely. I mean, I don't call everybody my mentor, but the people who are my mentors are so special to me. And then the other thing that happened, which I learned from the editor of my book, so this was before my stroke, But then, and she told me about this movie called Coco. It's a Pixar film, and it's an amazing movie, Coco. And I thought about it before I wrote my book, and it was inspired me. And then after I almost died and woke up in the hospital, I thought about it, and I said, and I wrote a blog post. "The view from below ground" was the subject line, and 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 Coco is a book, a movie that it's about. It talks about the Day of the Dead, which is a Mexican holiday. It's a 2-day holiday, usually in
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
November. Right, Dia de Muertos, and Dia de Muertos is a celebratory holiday. You don't mourn the dead, you celebrate the dead, and you celebrate them by remembering them.
I remember this movie.
Yeah, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's a song called "Remember Me." It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So anyway, what it was is that there's a concept called, I'm not giving away the movie, and it's worth watching for adults and kids, but very much for adults. That the idea that once you die, you are still alive as long as people remember you. The only time you experience a final death is when people stop remembering you. So when I just mentioned like Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman, for example, the two direct mail guys who are really forgotten by so many people, and they taught me direct mail from the ground up. Gordon Grossman taught me regression modeling, which I mentioned before. Dick Benson taught me every testing technique in direct mail ever devised. That's why I wanted those two PDFs of those two books on the overdeliverbook.com site. And so I just mentioned them today with you on this podcast. So they have not experienced the final death today.
That's right.
So that's a recurring theme for me as I continue to live, right? I'm not creating my legacy. I'm creating some kind of a living legacy to the people that got me here, that I'm still alive. I'm going to always keep talking about them because I stand on their shoulders. And to me, that it's not just to honor them and tribute, but I don't want them to experience a final death. I know that. But I also want them to be remembered because they left us so much. So then, again, sitting in the hospital room, a major epiphany, the thing that was my footprint was overdeliverbook.com, the site. So as long as the internet doesn't go down ever, and I can have my kids renew the URL every year, and so it stays up. That's all.
Forever and ever.
Yeah, forever and ever. But I want it to be up now, and that's why the book was written in 2019. It's still timely. It's a timeless book for the most part. I need to update a few things. Certainly, AI needs to be entered in, and there's some new things that I've written since that I'd like to update. But it's pretty timeless, mostly timeless.
Yeah.
And in that respect, I just I want it to be a tribute to my mentors as much as what I wrote and what I taught in the book.
So it's very funny because you're answering my question. Like, did you get this? Did you somehow know this? Because you're just going over everything I was going to ask you about. But I'm going to stop you because my next question is on mentorship value.
Mm.
So with everything that you just said about mentorship and how you feel about your mentors, you are yourself a mentor, someone who leads the Titans Mastermind and has mentored countless marketers, whether you know it or not, or believe it or not, or
I
it or
do
not.
know it, and I believe it. Yes, I'm not blind. Yes, I can.
What patterns have you observed in the marketers who achieve the greatest success after working with you, and what separates those who implement well from those who don't?
Yeah, great question. Great question. I have a concept that I didn't invent it, I'm sure, but it's a concept that I've shared with a lot of people, and it's that you don't choose your mentors choose you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that when I've gotten emails over the years and letters from people my entire career, and it's some version of, "Brian, will you be my mentor?" Like out of the blue. Someone I don't know, even someone I might know who I've taught something to, or I maybe even consulted with. "Will you be my mentor?" And I'm not rude about it, and I could be their mentor at some point, but it just doesn't work that way. And that's what I
Right. It doesn't work that way.
doesn't work that way. How it works is that we again, back to contribution. We contribute to each other, and not that you have to do me favors, not that you need to, do something for me so I become your mentor. Although it does work that way indirectly, because you need to show me that, like, why should I invest? Because being a mentor is not teaching you some things or doing a couple of calls with you. Being a mentor is to invest in a student, a mentee. You got to really invest time, effort. And, you say the people that I've had the most success with and how they implement, not because they listen to me and they just do what I tell them to do, but it's interactive. And we talk it through, and they come up with variations on what I tell them that's better than what I came up with, which is always the best, right?
Right.
You can't put your ego out there and say, you better do what I say. In fact, Dick Benson was a consultant that he used to fire clients for not doing what he told them to do. I'm not that kind of consultant, believe me. But you know what? He had the chops to do it, and he had 35 clients, all on retainer, at $2,000 a month. So, he has $70,000 a month coming in to just answer the phone when they called him. And he was really quick on the phone, hung up, then never said goodbye when he hung up. I mean, he wasn't rude, but he was like, boom, 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 right? Doom, boom, boom. And if you didn't listen to him, he'd eventually fire you as his client. He didn't care about the $2,000 if you didn't do what he said. I think that's a little too rigid, but it worked for him being my mentor, because I saw a model that I could emulate to some degree.
Sure.
And then do what I want with. Like Dan Kennedy. He's created the moat. My moat, again, doesn't have alligators in it, and you can swim across it, but there's still a little bit of a moat there. So
you have to earn it.
Yeah, so it's like in degrees, right? You do it in degrees. So the idea that, I'll give you it was a perfect example of two examples for me of how my mentors chose me. One was Gene Schwartz, the author of Breakthrough Advertising. Breakthrough Advertising is one of the greatest books ever written on marketing, copywriting, and human behavior, written in 1966. It's 100% relevant today as it was then. I do a Breakthrough Advertising boot camp. I'm doing one on May 6th. 2 weeks, 6 live calls, hour and a half each. We dive deep into the book and all the concepts, and we help people use the in their businesses.
How much does that cost?
For you as a Titans Accelerator member, $0. You get it for free. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Jessica. Right. So
well, that says a lot. Doesn't that say a lot that you are doing this boot camp about a book written in 1966?
And it'll be game changing for every person who participates, because we adapt their business to the concepts in the book. So the point was that Gene Schwartz, who's one of the greatest copywriters of all time, I have the exclusive rights to the book with Gene's wife. I think you knew that.
Yeah.
And breakthroughadvertising.com, anybody can get the book. You can look on Amazon. It's usually $500 or $600 a copy. I sell it for $125 to bargain, and it's worth 100 times what you pay for it.
Wow.
Anyway, so Gene, so I look, I wanted Gene as a mentor, of course. And Gene was writing copy for us at Boardroom, and I got sort of friendly with him. And but he was like he was sort of a vendor more than a partner, or he was partnering with me on the projects, but I didn't say, would you be my mentor? And what he did was he had his own little business on the side, Instant Improvement, which was he sold these little kind of chintzy health books, like the Tao of Sexology and how to rub your stomach away. It was like Chinese medicine. It was kind of funky stuff, but interesting stuff. But that was his side hustle in addition to the copywriting he did at a very high level for clients like us, and at the time Rodale Press and Phillips Publishing, big companies he wrote copy for. And so he showed me, because he was mailing health lists for Instant Improvement. I was mailing all the health lists for Boardroom because we had health books and newsletters. And I looked at his list plan. He showed me his list plan of the list he was mailing for instant improvement. I said, your list broker's doing you dirty here. He's not giving you the right selections on these lists. He's not doing it. And basically, I did his entire list plan. Again, 100 0, no expectation of a return, nothing except I wanted to help Gene because he has helped me so much writing copy for Boardroom. That led to a relationship that was like not just fatherly for me, but he was like the ultimate mentor for me in terms of copywriting, in terms of life skills, in terms of learning how to read deeply. I used to go to his house for lunch. He had all this artwork. He was a major collector of modern art. It was like every meal with him was an experience. And one day I said, Gene, I don't know if you want to admit it or not, but I consider you a mentor. And he looked at me like he was looking at us as sort of like because he was humble too, even though he had a big ego, but he was humble. And he said something like, "We're contemporaries, Brian. You know more about lists than I'll ever know." And that just
Yeah, that's the trade, right?
that's
That
the
is
trade, exactly.
right.
Everybody's an expert in this much.
Exactly.
So if you give this much, the thing that you're expert in freely, you will get into a mentor mode, and those are the best mentees. They're the best ones. So I also Jim Rutz was a great copywriter, and he died, and and I was writing a blog post. It's so ironic. I'm writing a blog post on my kitchen table for the day, like a few days after he died. I wanted to write a considerable blog. He was one of the best copywriters of his generation. And so I'm writing the obituary, or not the obituary, my blog post, and the phone rings. And I looked, and it's Ginger Rutz. I knew that was Jim's sister. I didn't even know she had my home phone number, but she must have got it out of Jim's phone book. And I pick up the phone. She said, "This is Ginger Rutz." And I said, "I know who you are. I've been friends with your brother forever. He's like one of the greatest copywriters for Boardroom and everybody that I ever knew. I'm heartbroken. I gave my condolences and all that." She says, "Yeah, I have a," and she was basically saying, "Brian, I was looking through all of Jim's correspondence, and it seems like he trusts you more than anybody."
Wow.
Holy shit. Like I knew that he trusted me because we were friends. We weren't just like writer and client. He became a really good friend. And that's the trick. I mean, I became a friend of Gene Schwartz. That's why I have the rights to his book. His wife trusted me with the rights to his book because I was his friend. So she said, "I've got 3 boxes of all of Jim's stuff, like all of his everything he ever wrote, everything he ever collected. He was a collector of everybody else's writing because he was a swipe file junkie. Swipe files are one of the keys for
Yeah.
copyright. They collect other people's copy. In fact, I wrote in the blog post I wrote about Jim. I wrote he used his swipes as furniture in his living room. He didn't have a lot of furniture in his living room, but he had piles. So this was the Boardroom pile. This was the Rodale pile, like the companies. And he had all of their mailing pieces from all copywriters all around his living room. Like that was his filing system. It
Oh
was
my
wild,
God.
wild. Messy, but wild.
Yeah.
But that's who he was. He was a creative spirit. He was just awesome. He was an awesome guy. So anyway, she shipped me like these 3 boxes, and I'm writing. I guess I didn't do anything with them for a year. They were in my storage facility. And she reminded me a few times, "Brian, what are you doing with the stuff?" I said, "I'd love to do a product, a Jim Rutz product." And so what I did was in my weekly blog, I went out to my audience. I had about 15,000. I have a 15,000 name list of copywriters and marketers, and I did a reprise of the copy. I called him the copywriter closest to God because he was very religious, and he did a religious school for boys in Nebraska, and he had this open church that he started. So that was the original blog post, the copywriter closest to God. So I reprised it to my list, and then in the PS I said, I got these 3 boxes of everything Jim Rutz ever wrote, and all of the stuff that he admired from other copywriters, and I want to put it in a product, but it's bigger than my head. I basically was like throwing it out there to my list.
Right.
And three young copywriters came forward and said, Brian, I want to work on that. Like they were big fans of Jim Rutz. They had followed all his stuff. And that's how the project started. So these three guys, and I said to them as we were working on it, and it's still true today, I'm not in touch with them all the time. I know the three guys intimately, still. And I said, you guys, whether you like it or not, are my mentees for life because the way you stepped up, they had no intention of asking for money. It was all like they just wanted to get Jim's
Out of
stuff out
love.
to a new
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah.
That's how you find a mentee and a mentor.
Right.
And it was a long story to prove the point
Well,
that
no,
that's how you
it's
do it.
showing they're rising to the challenge. I mean, you basically kind of gave a challenge, whether you intended to or not,
I didn't intend people to come out of
right?
my list and say they wanted to work on it. I
But
didn't.
that is a great story and a great lesson for everybody. And
Yeah.
it's going back to what you originally said at the beginning of the show, which was, 100-0, that concept, give 100% to others and expect nothing in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got a couple more questions. If you got a little bit more time for
Yeah, I
me.
do. I do. As long as people still want to listen to me.
Oh yeah, this is great stuff, man. And we're going longer than I usually go because you are the man.
Thank you.
All
I
right,
have
so
diarrhea of the mouth, but outside of that,
marketing ethics. So you've long advocated for ethical marketing practices. In today's increasing privacy concerns and consumer skepticism environment, how do you balance effective direct response techniques with maintaining consumer trust?
yeah, I mean, there's trust and there's compliance too. And so on the legal side, Marty Edelston, who was the founder of Boardroom, used to say to me, you know, I don't want lawyers running our business, but they're necessary evil kind of thing.
Yeah,
And finding lawyers that understood marketing was always my challenge. And I always found them. I searched for them because I needed CFOs who understood marketing too. Because I needed a CFO to tie my hands when I was spending too much money willy-nilly. But I also wanted them to understand that we were making investments
right,
in our marketing. So it was twofold, but you needed the right kind of person. If you have a penny pincher, no good. If you have
right,
someone who's not paying attention at all, no good. Same with a lawyer. If the lawyer's paying like, nope, can't do it, can't do it, can't do it every time, that's gonna piss us off as aggressive marketers. But you still don't want to, I don't look that great in orange, so I'm not looking, to go to jail. Um, so so that's compliant. The compliance aspect is, you need to find lawyers who, and they are out there, who understand marketing and can give you the risk reward on anything that you do. That's the compliance thing. As far as just ethics and how you market, it goes back to some of the things I talked about already about, everything's not a revenue event, but everything is a relationship event.
right,
If
right.
you are a marketer, like an entrepreneur starting a business, it's a dangerous place to be when you're bootstrapping it and you don't have a lot of money and, every dollar
It's
matters.
hell.
It's
It's
hell, right? You've
hell.
been through it and I have too.
Yes.
And so I think that there's this line that if you cross it, where it's sort of like, and I had experiences where even at Boardroom, where, cash flow was tight and we did some shortcuts and they almost really burned us. And I think that, you know, when you're desperate for money is the
You do
worst
dumb
time
things. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be like marketing aggressively. However, when you're desperate for money, you need to market aggressively so that you can make money. So it's a conundrum of sorts. But you always have to keep frontal lobe all the time. That, it may be that you have to cut back on your budget in order to stay ethical, I'll say. So that sounds kind of weird, but what I'm trying to say is that, if you're going to go aggressive with something that's risky, why do it that way? Titrate it. Do small numbers. Don't
That's
go
it.
crazy. Don't blow things out of the water. When you get a success, and you don't hear complaints, don't assume that there won't be complaints. So we always in the direct mail world, we had a term called pyramiding. So when you rented a list for 5,000 names and it did well, you wouldn't go to and the list had 100,000 names on it. You wouldn't go from 5,000 to 100,000. You would go to 5, maybe to 25,000 or even 15,000 to see how that worked. And so you're always testing both your offers, but you're also testing your lists and the marketplace. How is the marketplace? And you have to always monitor your complaints. There's a chapter in Over Deliver on customer service and fulfillment. And customer service and fulfillment is a marketing function.
It's true.
So you need to monitor the phone banks of your company. I one of the things I say in that chapter is that if you're the CEO of the company, no matter how big or small, take some time and listen in on customer service calls. Because again, when you look at your customers as a mass, you don't realize that they're people. And so you can hear them. Now, one complaint doesn't mean that you're screwing everything up. That's not what I'm saying. But you want to hear what the people are telling you to at least give you an indicator. Because everybody who complains, there's many more who stay silent. And those are the ones that'll kill you because they won't buy any more from you. So that's where you need to. And so there are ways to monitor it. So one way to monitor is to monitor your customer service calls, whether you're the CEO or you have somebody monitor it and transcribe. And in today's world, with AI and transcription services and all of the technology, it's a lot easier to do than it was in 1985 when, I had to sit at the office at 8 o'clock at night. And anytime and I was the only one in the office and there was no automated attendant. And when the phone rang, it was always a customer complaining. And I fielded them directly because I wanted to learn what the customers were telling us. There's also ways to do it through secret shoppers.
Yeah.
I recommend secret shoppers to every business to make sure that you don't get ahead of yourself. You don't want to get ahead of your skis, above your ski, whatever the expression is. You don't want to get ahead too far, and then learn about it when you've already made some mistakes. So what you want to do is have people you pay them to buy everything in your company, to break everything in your company. Nobody knows they're existing in the customer service area of the company. And I didn't invent it. It's a concept.
Yeah.
Secret shopper. But I highly recommend that because that'll keep you like humble. It'll keep you steady. It'll keep you so that when you start hearing, and then maybe like when someone is being aggressive, your secret shopper, the person you're paying, is intentionally breaking something in the company, or they're complaining about something, or they're going to say that I'm going to go to the attorney general. How are you going to handle that? And so it's sort of like a dry run and so that's important too. I have some other things in that chapter to help with that as well. But the idea, saying you're ethical is not enough. The marketplace will tell you whether you're ethical. You can say you're ethical.
You can't say that. That's like, I'm honest.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
Right.
honest. People are like, yeah, okay, I know your game.
Yeah, exactly. So
I got one last one and then we'll wrap up. This is on future directions. Looking at the marketplace, marketing landscape today, what excites you most about where the industry is heading? Conversely, what trends concern you that marketers should be cautious about embracing?
So I'm excited about a lot. I'm excited about what's old is new again. Like when someone says to me, "What's this thing called direct mail?" It excites me, not because I'm an expert in it, but because using direct mail on the back end of an online business is something everybody should consider. I'm not saying you should use direct mail or offline marketing as lead generation, but if you have a high ticket item or a high ticket merchandise or services, using direct mail is the killer app because
it's another great channel.
It is differentiator
if you got your
too.
Online stuff down, then that's the other channel to go after is direct mail. And people don't get mail anymore, right? So it's going to show right up.
Right, the mailboxes are empty. So it sounds counterintuitive, but I'm excited about things like direct mail and print advertising and things that are terrestrial and offline. Because Dan Kennedy does a presentation, offline marketing in an online world, and everything doesn't have to be online. Most things will be online, and it's more cost efficient. You can do it fantastic. You can do it really well, but to not have offline and online, in my book Over Deliver, I talk about O to O to O, which was a quote from some Hewlett Packard executive. But I took it and adapted it to direct marketing, which is, online to offline to online to offline. Meet the customer where they want to be met. If they don't want to be
Right.
met offline, don't meet them there. And you toggle between the two based on the offer, the price points, whatever. So to be all online all the time is kind of
You can
boring.
make them work together too. That's the other great thing about that
Oh, they
is,
work together well. They do.
right. Yeah.
So that's one thing. I think that the return to, again, another return to the past is the return to live events.
Yeah.
Um, they're not, they're not going to ever be since the pandemic. I'm not saying the pandemic ruined them forever because you can do a lot of the same things online on Zoom that you can do live, but there's nothing that replaces a hug. Like there's
That's
nothing that
true.
replaces, yeah. And so, you know, I'm excited about that. I'm definitely excited about AI. I'm definitely excited about ChatGPT and Claude and Jasper and all of the techniques. I don't even know all of them, but I
Yeah.
find the experts. I bring them to my mastermind to talk about them because
That's what
I
you
want
just
to learn.
had. You had that guy, I can't remember his name, but last week, was it George or something? But anyway, the guy that was just
Oh,
doing the
Scott
AI.
Vogel. Yeah, Scott Vogel has a personal ChatGPT
Yeah.
mirror image of himself that answers the question. It's like a clone.
That was incredible.
Incredible. I think the thing is though, I don't like it when it's used as a crutch, but and then saying it's a tool is not giving it enough credit either.
No, it's like an assistant.
It's an assistant.
It's an assistant.
It's a head start on everything you write, on everything you do. It's a
And it
time
gives you way
saver.
more stuff. Like it's a collaboration. It's a
Yes.
collaboration. I look at like an assistant that never ends. It's always there. You don't have to pay.
Yeah.
Like you can tell them to edit something 1,000 times and they'll gladly go back and do it
Right. They're
over and
not going to
over and
take a
over again.
vacation. They're not going to say, I don't give a shit. I'm not doing
Right.
it.
Give me a raise.
Right, right, right. So,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I am excited about it. I think that as a crutch, it's dangerous in the copywriting world specifically. I think that there are a lot of writers think that they can just use, AI and it'll be good enough. And the best copywriters are out there teaching that it's not good enough. I mean, it definitely enhances everything that you do. So I'm excited about it, and I have some trepidation about it, but you got to embrace it.
You got to. It's not
You
going
have to.
anywhere, and
It's
yeah,
here to stay, right?
yeah, exactly.
What was the second part of your question? The first part of your question was what I'm excited about.
Well, it was conversely, what trends concern you that marketers should be cautious about embracing? And I think
Yeah,
that,
that's one of them.
yeah,
So
AI
that's
is
both. I think also the compliance issue, the privacy issue, which has been around forever. Talk about something that was prevalent in 1985 and it's prevalent in 2025. And it's interesting. I had some experience. I used to lobby in Washington, D.C. with senators and congressmen when I worked at Boardroom, mostly on postal reform. We were a big direct mail company. We spent $22 million a year of postage. So,
wow,
we had as a big investment just in postage. So anytime the
geez,
postal rates went up, it affected our bottom line without any increase in delivery, without any increase in services.
sure,
It just was like a straight bottom line cost that just went up. So I
right.
always would lobby for that, but we also lobbied for privacy legislation. And what I found even back then, and I'm sure it's more true today, although it's being battled on both sides, but I always found that I just remember I think it was Gore Bush. So that would be 2000. Yeah, Gore Bush in 2000. Um, I remember the debate, and they basically they didn't agree on anything, obviously. But the one thing they agreed on was privacy, consumer privacy. It was like the issue that, like, they were kumbaya, like we have to protect Americans from Big Brother getting their data. And then when I was lobbying in Washington, D.C., I won't mention the senator, but I was with one of his chief of staff, and we were explaining to him the difference at the time. This was like before 2000, probably in the 90s. We were explaining the difference because that was a time when there was a lot of stuff about financial data and health data, like HIPAA,
Hmm.
and incidents of children in the household and how those were protected, and they should be. But then there's a fourth category, which is transaction data, like what people buy from you. And I had to like basically explain to this chief of staff of a US senator that transaction data is different than incidents of children, financial data, and health information, which all has to be self reported by your customers, and you
Hmm.
can't promote based on it unless they give you permission.
Hmm.
However, if someone buys something from you and you want to sell them another product based on the product you sold them, that's called direct marketing. And so, and the thing that I realized we're in for a long haul of pain, a lot of pain for a lot of years, and it's still true today. That
Yeah.
he didn't, they didn't, they didn't separate out transaction data from those other three. And, I felt I did my duty by explaining it in a way that I think got to him. And of course, direct mail is an opt-out medium, meaning that if you have a name who bought someone who bought from you in direct mail, you can mail to them as long as they don't tell you to, as long as they don't opt out. Email, when it started, was an opt-in medium. They had to opt in and double opt in
Right.
and all that, which was an outgrowth of, the privacy issues. They're all good. I think opt-in is a good thing for email and online. And I was always afraid that for direct mail, that they would start making that opt-in. Like you had like just buying a product from a company would automatically say, now I have to opt in to be on the list. Hasn't happened yet. But, there are major lists of where you can buy a list of people who say they don't want to get any direct mail, and you have to overlay that on your mailing before you do a mailing, so you don't mail to people who don't want to get your mail, which is fine. Why do you want to mail to people who don't want your mail? Just like
Right.
you want to email
Exactly.
people who don't want to get your email. So it makes sense. But an opt-out medium versus an opt-in medium, it's a big difference. So that's something that I'm always watching, paying close attention to. Um, and, the privacy issue will only get more intense over time as people are. I mean, look at the stuff with the government. As soon as people said, "Oh, they have the administration has your tax information or your personal data," when there are data breaches, it's like a big story, right? So I think that, those issues from a marketing standpoint will it's not a trickle down. It's going to affect everything that we do if there's ever legislation that prevents us from, conducting business
Cat's
in the
out of the
marketplace.
bag. The cat's out of the bag. After 9/11 and they invented Homeland Security, that cat is out of the bag. The government is snooping on us so much
Right.
that it's hard for them to how are they going to regulate? And the other thing too is like you're right. You hear these data breaches and everybody's in a but it's done. It's over and done. There's nothing you can't do much. You get a
No.
note from the company. By the way, your data was our data was
Right,
breached.
right, right.
Your shit is
Change your
everywhere.
passwords.
Yeah, like what are you supposed to do, man? It's just but
So
everybody's
those are
in the
things
same boat.
that I wouldn't say they keep me up at night, but
Yeah, they're worrisome.
yeah, worrisome,
Yeah,
worrisome.
for marketers, for sure. Yeah. Because they could shut us down easily.
Oh,
And
the other thing that concerns me is single channel marketing. So that
yep.
I bought the URL when I started my business, and I still own it. I pay GoDaddy every year for it. It's www.singlechannelmarketingissoboring.com. I own them.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to put it in their browser and go to that, it goes to my site, briankurtz.net. So, but singlechannelmarketingissoboring.com, I buy it just to keep reminding me that, the most dangerous, Dan Kennedy says the most dangerous number in business is one. So certainly one channel, and you said it before about, direct mail being a viable, solid channel to offset a lot of your online channels. But you can't be everywhere. And if you try to be in every channel, you won't not only drive yourself crazy, you'll go broke. So I really believe in what Perry Marshall teaches, which is what he calls Maze 2.0. And Maze 2.0 is like two axes. And one axis, I name them differently than he does, but it's the same principle. One axis is online, offline, and the other axis is recorded and live. And now you have four boxes, right? And every medium can fit into one of those boxes. So something that's live and online could be a live webinar. Something that's recorded and offline could be a book. So you could see anything at Amazon would be online and recorded. Not
Right.
right. So and you want to advertise on all of these media, in all this media, and you can't be everywhere. So what Perry talks about is like, if you can be in one in each quadrant, then it'll be like you won't be everywhere, but it'll look like you're everywhere. I kind of say to the people in my mastermind when we talk about that, I say, try to be in two in every quadrant, not more than that, because that's eight. That's eight different media. That might be too much. You might not have a budget for that. Some media is more expensive than others. But you want to get a sense of, you don't want to be dependent on one, because if you get shut down, I mean, how many horror stories do we hear about Facebook shutting you down or Amazon shutting you down? So it's you can't be reliant on one. And that's something that's been around for a long time. Even when advertising opportunities were finite back when I started in the business, even then we wanted to be diversified. That's why I always wanted to be in broadcast. I wanted to always test radio and TV in addition to direct mail and print, because I'd have, if for some reason, and doesn't the U.S. Postal Service is a lot kinder and gentler than Facebook, but you could get shut down for mail fraud too. And if we were we'd be out of business back then if we got shut down for direct mail, because it was still, 75% of our business, if not more. But we also had some diversified media to make sure. And then we got into the infomercial business for a couple of years. That was half our business. So that felt good, actually, because now we more than doubled the entire business, but half of it was on TV and half of it was in direct mail. And that alone protected us for those 3 years from getting shut down on either. So that was a severe example of that. But, being diversified with your media is just such a critical thing. And, so it's not just, and it's not just the media. It's not only having more than one product. A product's not a business. A promotion is not a business. And one medium is not a business.
You're right. And with that said, Brian Kurtz, my man, that was a clinic. Thank you so much for your time today. Everybody, this has been my great friend and just marketing genius, Brian Kurtz. We spent a little over an hour with him. Everything that he talked about is in this book, Over Deliver. You heard him, overdeliverbook.com. Go get it there.
If they go to brightest.net, there's a lot of free content there.
Yep.
All of my blogs. And if they opt in to my online family, they'll get my blog every Sunday. I don't do a lot of selling in it.
He does no selling or very little selling. You might be, the only thing that I've seen is like sometimes you'll talk about somebody else's product that's in your group or something like that.
Right. It's got to be educational. It's got to be.
Most of the time, you're just selling your webinars that you're giving.
The Breakthrough Advertising Bootcamp or Breakthrough Advertising, Brilliance Breakthrough. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the Jim Rutz product.
Yeah, well, it's just great. And all right, well, Brian, thank you so much, buddy. And I will see you tomorrow, right? I'll see you
Yes, we have
tomorrow
a
at
call
the
tomorrow. That's correct.
1 o'clock.
All right.
All right, pal. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been Brian on Tom, Brian and Tom on the World of Marketing. Thanks so much, pal. Stay on the